Mrs. Miller, you're 58 this year. Is that correct? Dr. Evans' voice was calm, professional. Too calm. I sat in the sterile white office, sunlight slicing through the blinds and striping the floor like prison bars. My fingers twisted the strap of my purse over and over again. I had retired 3 months ago. For the first time in 40 years, I didn't have papers to grade, bells to follow, or students asking questions. I thought this stage of life would feel peaceful. Instead, it felt empty. Yes, I answered. I just retired. Dr. Evans looked at the screen again. Her gold-rimmed glasses slid slightly down her nose. I need to ask you something personal. My stomach tightened. Have you and your husband maintained a normal, intimate life over the years? The air in the room shifted. I felt my face burn. After 30 years of marriage, intimacy shouldn't have been a difficult topic. But in my case, it was a wound that had never healed. No, I said quietly. We haven't. How long? 18 years. She blinked. 18? I nodded. That was the first time I had ever said the number out loud. 18 years of sleeping alone in a king-sized bed. 18 years of hearing the faint creak of the living room couch when he turned over at night. 18 years of being married to a man who never touched me again. It started in 2008. Michael and I were both 40. Our son Jake had just left for college. The house felt too large, too quiet. We had been college sweethearts. We built our life carefully, brick by brick. He became an engineer. I became an English teacher. We had routines. Sunday grocery shopping. Friday takeout. Family movie nights. Our marriage wasn't unhappy. But it wasn't alive either. Then Ethan arrived. He was the new art teacher. 35. Gentle. Creative. He hummed while grading papers. He kept fresh flowers in his classroom. When it rained, he carried 2 umbrellas, one in case someone forgot theirs. He noticed things. Mrs. Miller, he said one afternoon, leaning against my classroom door, you look like someone who used to write poetry. I laughed. Used to? You still do. You just don't let anyone see it. That sentence went straight through me. I hadn't felt seen in years. We started having coffee in the faculty lounge. Talking about books. About dreams we once had. He listened in a way that made me feel young again. Not a mother. Not a wife. Just Susan. One evening, as I stood washing dishes, Michael asked casually, "You're staying late a lot." "Staff meetings," I said without looking up. He nodded. He always nodded. That quiet acceptance made it easier to lie. The affair never became physical. But emotionally, it crossed every line. Then one Saturday, everything shattered. I told Michael I had a workshop. Instead, I drove out to a small lake outside town with Ethan. We sat on a blanket. He sketched. I read him poetry. When the sun dipped low, he reached for my hand. "Susan, I think I..." "Mom." The voice froze my blood. Jake stood 10 feet away. Beside him was Michael. Jake's face looked like someone had broken something sacred. Michael's face looked like nothing at all. "Home," was all he said. The drive back was silent. At home, Michael sent Jake upstairs. Then he lit a cigarette, something he only did when deeply stressed. "How long?" he asked. 3 months, I whispered. "Did you sleep with him?" "No," I cried. "I swear. We just talked." He stood. "I'm giving you 2 options. Divorce. Or we stay married for Jake. But from this moment on, we are roommates." The words hit harder than any slap. "You'll act like my wife in public. But in private, it's over." That night, he moved to the couch. I waited for anger. Instead, I got ice. Back in the present, Dr. Evans removed her glasses. "Susan, long-term emotional and physical isolation can affect hormone levels. There are changes in your uterine lining that concern me." My heart skipped. "Concern you how?" She hesitated. "I'm seeing signs of old surgical scarring." "Surgical?" I shook my head. "I've never had surgery." Her expression shifted from clinical to grave. "The imaging is clear. There is scar tissue consistent with a procedure done many years ago. My ears started ringing. That's not possible, I whispered. Are you absolutely certain? She asked gently. I tried to remember. 2008. After the lake. After Michael found out. I had fallen into a deep depression. I barely slept. I took sleeping pills some nights. I remember waking once with abdominal pain. I assumed it was stress. My pulse quickened. Doctor, what kind of surgery? She inhaled slowly. It appears consistent with a terminated pregnancy. The room tilted. Pregnancy? No, I said, shaking my head violently. I would know. Not if it happened while you were unconscious. The words struck like lightning. Unconscious. Sleeping pills. Hospital. My breath came in sharp, uneven pulls. Go home, she said softly. Ask your husband. Michael was in the living room when I arrived. Reading the newspaper. The same way he had been 18 years ago. Michael, I said, my voice already trembling. Did I have surgery in 2008? The paper lowered slowly. His face drained of color. He stood. That was all the answer I needed. What did you do? I whispered. He turned away. Do you really want to know? Yes. He exhaled heavily. The night you took too many sleeping pills. I took you to the hospital. My stomach dropped. The doctors ran tests. You were 3 months pregnant. My world stopped. Pregnant? That's impossible. He looked at me then. Cold. Broken. Tired. We hadn't touched each other in 6 months. The silence that followed was suffocating. The baby wasn't his. What happened? My voice barely existed. I signed the consent forms. My heart shattered inside my chest. I had them perform an abortion. Everything inside me collapsed. You did what? What was I supposed to do? He shouted, for the first time in 18 years. Let you wake up carrying another man's child? Let the entire town know? Let Jake find out? That was my baby, I cried. You lost the right to that baby when you chose him over your family. We stood there, 2 people who had destroyed each other in different ways. And you never told me. I thought it would hurt you less not knowing. But now I knew. And nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't scream. That's what surprised me most. I didn't throw things. I didn't collapse. I didn't even cry right away. I just stared at Michael as if I were seeing him for the first time. 18 years of distance suddenly had a shape. A reason. A buried secret that had been rotting beneath our marriage like a cracked foundation. You made that decision alone, I said, my voice hollow. You made yours alone first, he replied. The words hung between us like smoke. I turned away because if I kept looking at him, I might have broken into pieces. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed we had once shared and tried to remember every detail from 2008. The depression. The pills. The dizziness. The blank space where memory should have been. 3 months pregnant. I pressed my hand against my stomach, as if some echo of that child still lingered inside me. Was it Ethan's? It must have been. Michael had been right. We hadn't touched each other in months before that lake incident. Our marriage had already been drifting long before I ever met Ethan. But the affair hadn't been physical. Had it? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to reconstruct those weeks. There had been one night after a faculty dinner, too much wine, too many emotions. Ethan had walked me to my car. I remembered crying. I remembered him holding me. I didn't remember more than that. The possibility slithered into my chest like ice. Maybe I hadn't known everything about myself either. 3 weeks passed in silence. Michael and I moved around each other like strangers forced to share a waiting room. The air in the house felt heavier, thick with unsaid things. Then the phone rang. It was nearly midnight. Michael answered. Yes. His tone sharpened immediately. Slow down. My heart began pounding. What happened? I whispered. He looked at me, face drained. It's Jake. Everything inside me dropped. He was in a car accident. The hospital lights were blinding. I hated how hospitals smelled like antiseptic and fear. We rushed through sliding glass doors toward the emergency department. A nurse approached us. "Are you the parents of Jacob Miller?" "Yes," we both answered at once. "He's conscious, but he's lost a significant amount of blood. We're stabilizing him now. Can we see him?" I asked. "In a few minutes." My legs felt weak. Michael stood rigid beside me, fists clenched. After what felt like hours, a doctor in blue scrubs approached. "I'm Dr. Patel. Your son has internal bleeding. We've controlled most of it, but he needs a transfusion immediately." "Take mine," I said without hesitation. Michael nodded. "Test us." Dr. Patel glanced at a chart. "There's something unusual." My stomach tightened. "Jake's blood type is AB negative." I blinked. "Okay." Dr. Patel looked at us carefully. "And your blood types?" "I'm O positive," I answered automatically. Michael said, "A positive." The doctor hesitated. "With those blood types, it's genetically impossible for the two of you to have a child with AB negative." The words didn't register at first. "I'm sorry?" Michael asked. Dr. Patel spoke slowly. "For a child to have AB blood, one parent must carry A and the other B. And at least one parent must carry Rh negative." Silence swallowed the room. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. That must be a mistake," I stammered. "We've run it twice." Michael turned toward me. Not angry. Not shouting. Just staring. Like a man watching a bridge collapse in slow motion. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because suddenly, the math was undeniable. Jake, our son, was not Michael's biological child. The waiting room clock ticked far too loudly. "I need air," I whispered. I walked down the hallway blindly until I reached an empty corridor. My chest felt tight, like something was crushing it from the inside. Michael followed. "How long?" he asked quietly. The same question as 18 years ago. Only this time, it wasn't about Ethan. It was about Jake. "I don't know," I said honestly. His jaw tightened. "Don't lie to me again." "I'm not lying," I cried. "Jake was conceived during our marriage. I never cheated before Ethan. Never." "Then explain it." I slid down against the wall and covered my face. "There was a conference," I whispered. "In Chicago. 26 years ago." The memory surfaced slowly. I had been 29. Jake was conceived shortly after. "It was one night," I said, shaking. "A colleague." It meant nothing. I was drunk. I hated myself afterward. I convinced myself it couldn't matter. Michael stared at me as if I were dissolving in front of him. "You let me believe he was mine," he said. "I believed it too," I sobbed. "I truly did. I never questioned it. But biology had." And now, in the harsh fluorescent light of a hospital corridor, it had finally spoken. Michael leaned back against the opposite wall. 26 years of birthday parties. Science fairs. Baseball games. Parent-teacher meetings. Teaching him to shave. Teaching him to drive. 26 years of being dad. None of it biological. And yet, every single bit of it real. "He calls me dad," Michael said, almost to himself. "Yes." His voice cracked for the first time. "I was there when he took his first steps. I know. I stayed up all night when he had pneumonia. I remember." He looked at me, eyes glistening. "And now you're telling me he isn't mine?" I couldn't answer. Because both things were true. He wasn't. And he was. Dr. Patel returned. "We've stabilized him." The transfusion worked. Relief flooded me so suddenly I nearly collapsed. "Can we see him?" "Yes. But keep it calm." "He's groggy." When we entered the room, Jake lay pale against white sheets. Tubes ran from his arms. A bruise darkened one side of his face. "Mom," he murmured. "I'm here," I whispered, brushing his hair back. Michael stood at the foot of the bed, silent. Jake's eyes shifted to him. "Hey, Dad." That word again. "Dad." Michael stepped forward slowly. He took Jake's hand, careful of the 4 lines. I'm here, son. There was no hesitation. No pause. Just love. Raw and automatic. I watched Michael's face carefully. The shock was still there. The betrayal. The weight of truth. But stronger than all of it was something else. Something immovable. He squeezed Jake's hand gently. You scared us. Jake gave a weak smile. Sorry. And in that small hospital room, surrounded by machines and secrets, I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. The truth had shattered our history. But it hadn't erased it. And the real reckoning had only just begun. Jake was discharged 3 days later. A fractured rib. A concussion. 8 stitches near his temple. Bruised but alive. Alive. That word was all that mattered. At least, that's what I told myself. But beneath the relief was something else, something simmering and unstable. The truth had surfaced, and once truth rises, it refuses to sink again. The first week after the accident, we didn't mention the blood test. Not in front of Jake. Not at all. Michael was attentive, almost fiercely so. He adjusted Jake's pillows. He argued with nurses about medication timing. He drove him home carefully, as if one wrong turn might shatter him again. If Jake noticed anything strange, he didn't say it. But I saw it in Michael. He was watching Jake differently. Not with distance. Not with doubt. With assessment. As if he were looking for pieces of himself in a puzzle that no longer fit. Jake's laugh. Jake's posture. The way Jake furrowed his brow when thinking. Had any of it ever been Michael's? Or had love simply painted similarities where biology had not? 2 weeks later, I found Michael at the dining room table with his laptop open. Stacks of old photo albums were spread out beside him. Pictures from the 90s. Jake in overalls, covered in mud. Michael holding him up at the zoo. A beach trip where Jake sat on Michael's shoulders, tiny hands gripping his father's hair. Michael didn't look up when I entered. I ran the dates, he said quietly. My throat tightened. What dates? Your Chicago conference. The word Chicago felt like a confession. You were gone 4 days. Yes. You came back different. I closed my eyes. I hadn't realized he had noticed. You were distant for weeks. Then you told me you were pregnant. His voice wasn't angry. It was analytical. Engineer-like. Piecing together structural failure. I never questioned it, he said. Not once. Michael. He finally looked at me. Who was he? The question felt heavier than any before it. Daniel Harper, I whispered. The name felt foreign now, like something from another lifetime. History professor. Married. 2 kids. Michael nodded slowly, absorbing it. Does he know? No. Are you sure? I ended it the next morning, I said. I told him it was a mistake. I never contacted him again. Michael stared at the screen. I found him. My heart skipped. What? He's in Munich now. University lecturer. Divorced. The room felt suddenly smaller. How did you? You'd be surprised what you can find when you know where to look. Of course he could. Michael was methodical. Precise. Relentless when necessary. Did you contact him? I asked. No. The same answer he'd given about Mark, the man from 2008. But this felt different. This wasn't about a terminated pregnancy. This was about a living son. That night, Michael sat alone on the back porch. He hadn't smoked in years. But there he was, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. I stepped outside. You'll get sick, I said softly. He gave a faint huff. Already. I sat across from him. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, do you think he deserves to know? My heart pounded. Who? Daniel. The idea of it made me nauseous. He has a life, I said. A different country. Different family. And Jake? Michael asked. Does he deserve to know? That question cut deeper. Jake. Our son. 26 years old. Stable job. Long-term girlfriend. Plans for the future. What would this truth do to him? It would destroy him, I whispered. Or it would set him free. Free from what? From a lie. The word lie echoed. Our marriage had been built on layers of silence. First Chicago. Then Ethan. Then the abortion. Now Jake's blood type. How much truth could one family survive? A week later, Michael did something I didn't expect. He asked Jake to go fishing. Just the two of them. They hadn't done that in years. I watched them load the old tackle box into the truck. Jake moved carefully, still healing. Michael hovered protectively. They looked normal. As if nothing had cracked open beneath us. They were gone for 6 hours. When they returned, Jake looked thoughtful. Michael looked exhausted. That night, after Jake went to bed, Michael came into the kitchen where I was washing dishes. I almost told him, he said. My hands froze in the water. What stopped you? He swallowed. He caught a fish. Small thing. He looked at me like he did when he was 8. Michael's voice thickened. He said, guess you still remember how to teach me, Dad. Silence filled the space between us. I couldn't do it, Michael whispered. I couldn't take that word away from him. Dad. Not father. Not biological parent. Dad. A title earned in scraped knees and bedtime stories. In math homework and late-night fevers. In every ordinary, sacred moment. But truth has a way of surfacing, even when we try to bury it. 3 nights later, Jake stood in the doorway of the living room while Michael and I were talking. How long were you going to keep it from me? My heart stopped. He was holding a folder. Hospital discharge papers. Inside, the blood type results. Michael stood slowly. Jake. I googled it, Jake said, voice shaking. AB negative. Mom's O. You're A. That doesn't work. The room felt airless. Jake looked at me first. Is he not my father? The question shattered something inside me. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Michael stepped forward. I raised you, he said carefully. That's not what I asked, Jake replied. The hurt in his voice was unbearable. Answer me. Tears blurred my vision. No, I whispered. Not biologically. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Jake staggered back slightly, as if physically struck. So who is? Silence. Michael looked at me. This was mine to confess. His name is Daniel Harper, I said weakly. It was before you were born. One night. I didn't know. You didn't know. Jake's voice cracked. You didn't know there was a chance. I believed you were Michael's, I sobbed. Jake turned to Michael. You knew. Michael hesitated. I found out at the hospital. Jake's face shifted, confusion mixing with betrayal. And you didn't tell me. I needed time. Jake laughed bitterly. Time? This is my life. He looked between us. So what now? Am I supposed to call some stranger in Germany and say, hi, I exist? The word Germany echoed sharply. Jake stared. Germany? Michael closed his eyes briefly. Yes. You looked him up, Jake realized. The room was unraveling. I had to know, Michael said. Jake's breathing grew uneven. And what about you? He asked Michael suddenly. What do you want? The question caught even Michael off guard. What do you mean? Do you still want to be my dad? Silence. Raw. Fragile. Michael crossed the room slowly. He stood directly in front of Jake. I have been your father for 26 years, he said, voice steady but thick with emotion. That doesn't disappear because of a lab result. Jake's eyes filled. But I'm not yours. Michael shook his head. You are mine in every way that matters. The words cracked something open in all of us. Jake broke first. He stepped forward and hugged Michael. Hard. Not polite. Not careful. Desperate. Michael held him just as tightly. And in that embrace, I saw something extraordinary. Love refusing to surrender to biology. But the question still lingered. Somewhere in Munich, a man lived his life unaware that a son existed across an ocean. And now Jake knew. The next decision would be his. For 2 days after the confrontation, the house was silent. Not the old silence, polite, controlled, carefully maintained. This was raw silence. Doors closed more firmly. Footsteps lingered outside rooms before retreating. Every glance carried weight. Jake didn't avoid Michael. That was the strange part. He still said Dad. Still asked for help adjusting the bandage near his temple. Still complained about the hospital food. But something had shifted in his eyes. He was measuring himself now. Measuring us. Measuring the invisible thread that had tied his entire identity together. On the third evening, Jake came downstairs with his laptop. He sat at the dining table where Michael had once spread out photo albums. I found him, Jake said quietly. Neither of us pretended not to know who he meant. Daniel Harper. Munich. History lecturer. 58 years old. A man who had unknowingly lived parallel to us for nearly 3 decades. Jake turned the laptop toward us. A university profile page filled the screen. There he was. Older. Thinner. Silver in his hair. But the resemblance was undeniable. The shape of the jaw. The arch of the eyebrows. Even the slight tilt of the head when photographed. I felt my breath catch. Jake saw it too. So that's where it comes from, he murmured. Michael didn't move. Didn't blink. Just absorbed the image like a man staring at a blueprint of a house he hadn't built but somehow owned. Jake closed the laptop. I'm calling him. My heart slammed against my ribs. Jake, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice wasn't angry. It was steady. I deserve to know who I am. Michael swallowed but nodded once. When? Now. The time difference meant it was early morning in Munich. Jake found the university contact number first. No answer. Then an email. He stared at the blank message box for a long time. What do I even say? He asked. I had no answer. Michael stepped forward. Start with the truth. Jake typed slowly. Professor Harper. My name is Jacob Miller. This may sound strange, but I believe you knew my mother, Susan Miller, many years ago in Chicago. I recently discovered information that suggests you may be my biological father. He paused. His hands trembled slightly. Michael rested a hand on the back of Jake's chair, not touching him, just present. Jake continued typing. I am not reaching out for money or obligation. I simply want clarity. If you are willing, I would appreciate a conversation. He read it once. Twice. Then hit send. The whoosh of the email leaving felt louder than it should have. And just like that, a secret that had survived 26 years crossed an ocean in less than a second. The reply came 12 hours later. Jake was the one who saw the notification. He didn't call us right away. He read it alone first. Then he walked into the living room where Michael and I were sitting. He responded, Jake said. My pulse quickened. Well? Michael asked carefully. Jake swallowed. He wants to video call. My stomach dropped. Today. Tomorrow morning. His time. That meant tonight for us. The room felt suddenly smaller. Jake looked at Michael. Will you be there? The question carried layers. Michael didn't hesitate. If you want me to be. Jake nodded. I do. That evening felt like waiting for a storm. No one ate much. No one turned on the television. At 8 p.m., Jake opened his laptop on the coffee table. The screen glowed in the dim room. Incoming video call. Jake's finger hovered for half a second. Then he answered. The screen flickered. And there he was. Daniel Harper. Older now, but unmistakable. He stared at the camera for a long moment before speaking. Jacob. His voice carried a slight tremor. Yes. Daniel inhaled slowly. I received your email. Silence stretched. I don't know what to say. Jake's voice was calm but tight. Did you know my mother was pregnant? Daniel's eyes widened. No. The word came immediately. I swear to you, I didn't. I felt something inside me twist, relief mixed with shame. It was one night, Daniel continued. She ended it the next morning. I never heard from her again. Jake nodded faintly. There's no doubt. Daniel asked carefully. About timing? The hospital confirmed my blood type, Jake replied. It's genetically impossible for the man who raised me to be my biological father. Daniel's gaze flickered. For the first time, he noticed Michael sitting slightly behind Jake. And you are? Daniel asked. Michael's voice was steady. His dad. The word hung there. Not biological. Not technical. Just dad. Daniel studied him. You raised him? Yes. Daniel nodded slowly, absorbing that. I don't wish to disrupt anything, he said carefully. If my existence causes harm, It already has, Michael said quietly. The blunt honesty startled all of us. Jake glanced back at him. But not because of you, Michael added. Because of secrets. Silence again. Daniel leaned closer to the camera. Jacob, I don't know what role you want me to play. I have 2 daughters. They don't know about this. I didn't know about this. Jake's jaw tightened slightly. I'm not looking for a replacement. The word replacement pierced me. I just needed to see you, Jake continued. To understand where I come from. Daniel nodded slowly. You have my eyes, he said softly. Jake gave a small, almost involuntary smile. Yeah. I noticed. They talked for nearly an hour. About history. About Jake's job. About small, neutral things that skirted around the massive reality between them. Daniel never once claimed him. Never once said my son. He said Jacob. Always Jacob. When the call ended, Jake closed the laptop slowly. The room was heavy with unspoken emotion. Well? I asked gently. Jake looked at Michael. Then at me. He's not my father, Jake said. Relief and confusion collided in my chest. What do you mean? I whispered. He's the man who helped create me, Jake replied. But he's not my father. He turned to Michael fully. You are. Michael's composure cracked. Just slightly. Jake stood and walked toward him. I don't care what the blood test says, he continued. You taught me how to ride a bike. You sat through every terrible school play. You grounded me when I deserved it. A faint smile flickered through tears. You're stuck with me. Michael let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for weeks. He pulled Jake into his arms again. This time, there was no hesitation at all. Across the ocean, a biological connection had been acknowledged. But in that living room, something stronger had been chosen. Not by accident. Not by genetics. By decision. And for the first time in 18 years, I saw something in Michael's eyes that I hadn't seen in a very long time. Not anger. Not distance. But possibility. After the call to Germany, something changed in the house. Not instantly. Not magically. But subtly. Jake slept better that night. The question that had haunted him for weeks had an answer now. Daniel existed. He was human. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't a savior. He was simply biology. And biology, Jake had decided, wasn't enough to rewrite 26 years of love. But for Michael and me, the reckoning was just beginning. 2 nights later, Michael and I sat at the kitchen table after Jake went home to his apartment. No television. No distractions. Just us. I almost lost him, Michael said quietly. I know. And when I thought he might die, none of it mattered. Not Chicago. Not Ethan. Not the abortion. The word still stung. You should have told me, I whispered. He nodded. I know. There were no excuses this time. I thought I was protecting you, he continued. I thought if you didn't know about the pregnancy, you wouldn't grieve. I grieved anyway, I said. I just didn't know why. 18 years of cold distance. 18 years of punishment, his and mine. You punished me, I said gently. But you punished yourself more. He didn't deny it. I didn't know how to forgive you, he admitted. And I didn't know how to leave. So you stayed. Yes. And you froze. Yes. The honesty hurt, but it was clean pain, not hidden rot. For the first time in years, we weren't defending ourselves. We were just speaking. A week later, Jake invited us to dinner. His girlfriend, Hannah, was there. Warm. Observant. Kind. At one point she said, "You too raised a good man." You too. Not you, Michael. Not you, Susan. You too. Michael glanced at me across the table. And I saw it clearly then. Despite everything, we had built something real together. Flawed. Damaged. But real. That night, back home, Michael stood in the bedroom doorway. He hadn't stepped inside it at night in 18 years. I don't want to die on the couch, he said quietly. My breath caught. That's not how I want our story to end. I felt tears rise. Then don't let it. He hesitated. I don't know how to go back. We don't go back, I said. We start from here. There were no dramatic embraces. No cinematic music. Just two aging people standing in the wreckage of their pride. Choosing. He walked into the room. And for the first time in 18 years, he didn't leave. Months passed. Jake met Daniel once, in person, in Munich. They walked through a museum. Had coffee. Talked. When Jake came home, he said, "He's a good man. I'm glad I met him. Do you feel different?" I asked. He shook his head. I feel clearer. And him? Michael asked carefully. Jake smiled faintly. He said he's grateful you raised me. Michael didn't respond verbally, but that night, he stood a little taller. Healing wasn't fast. Michael and I went to therapy. We said things we should have said decades earlier. We apologized without conditions. We acknowledged damage without minimizing it. One evening, almost a year after the accident, we sat on the porch together. No cigarettes. Just quiet air and the sound of crickets. "Do you regret staying?" I asked him. He thought for a long time. "No," he said finally. "Because if I had left, I wouldn't have been his father." Tears slipped down my face. "And us?" I asked softly. He reached for my hand. "I'm still deciding," he said honestly. But he didn't let go. And sometimes, at this age, that's what love looks like. Not fireworks. Not perfection. But two people who broke each other. And chose not to walk away.